After 27 years on death row, Charles Victor Thompson was executed on January 28, 2026 at 6 p.m. inside the Huntsville unit in Texas. The sentence was carried out by lethal injection. His case spanned nearly 3 decades, marked by a double murder, a rare prison escape, and years of failed appeals.
In this video, we walk through the crime,
The relationship that turned violent, and the final hours before his execution. But before we start, let us know in the comment where you're watching from. This is Verdict Vault. Stay with us. The story traces back to Houston in the late 1990s. In 1997, Thompson, then 27, met 39-year-old Dennise Hayslip through the Houston bar scene. She worked as a nail technician and was raising her 13-year-old son, Wade, following the collapse of an 18-year marriage. She was rebuilding her life in northwest Harris County, living in an apartment on Wunderlich Drive and working steady hours to support her child. Thompson entered her world during a vulnerable period. What started as companionship quickly turned into a relationship. He promised stability, protection, support for both mother and son. That promise did not hold. Testimony later revealed a pattern of control, intimidation, and physical abuse. Witnesses reported seeing Hayslip arrive at work with bruises. Her brother later confirmed he had seen a black eye not long before the killings. Thompson admitted he struck her during the relationship, causing visible injuries. He struggled with alcohol and cocaine use, and those addictions amplified his volatility and possessiveness. He had left school in the 10th grade and worked a series of trade and labor jobs, HVAC work, pest control, general labor. He had no adult prison record at the time, but acknowledged prior trouble as a juvenile. The relationship with Hayslip grew increasingly unstable. After roughly a year, she ended it. Not long afterward, she began seeing Darren Cain, a 30-year-old bartender connected to the same social circle where she and Thompson had first met. Friends described Cain as calm, steady, and protective, the opposite of the chaos she had been living with. The relationship developed gradually, then became serious. Thompson refused to accept the breakup. In the early morning hours of April 29, 1998, the situation erupted. Around 2:30 a.m., Darren Cain received a frantic call from Hayslip. She was crying and afraid. Thompson was inside her apartment, assaulting her and refusing to leave. Cain drove over immediately. When he arrived, he walked into a volatile scene. Hayslip was visibly distressed. Thompson was inside. The encounter escalated into a physical fight between the two men that lasted several minutes. Cain eventually overpowered him. The aggression drained out of Thompson almost instantly. He shifted tone. He apologized. He said he would accept the breakup. He claimed he would move on. The tension cooled, at least on the surface. The two sat outside the apartment afterward. They talked. They shared a beer. The tension appeared to ease. At approximately 3 a.m., a Harris County Sheriff's deputy responded to a domestic disturbance call at the complex. When the deputy arrived, Thompson and Cain appeared calm. No active violence, no immediate threat. The deputy separated them and escorted Thompson off the property. It looked resolved. It wasn't. Instead of going home and letting the situation end, Thompson drove away, retrieved a semi-automatic pistol, and began planning his return.
Approximately 3 hours later, in the early morning hours of April 30th, Charles Thompson returned to the apartment. This time, he was armed. What happened next is documented in court testimony, forensic evidence, and Thompson's own confession to a friend shortly after. Thompson confronted Darren Cain first. Forensic evidence established that Thompson fired 4 rounds into Cain's neck and chest. Prosecutor Wisner described the shooting in detail. He shot Darren twice in the chest. Darren turned to flee. He was shot once in the back, fell on the floor, and then Thompson held a gun to the back of his head, upper part of his neck, killed him right there. Darren Cain died instantly at the scene. Thompson then turned his attention to Dennise Hayslip. According to court records, after reloading his weapon, Thompson uttered the words, "I can shoot you too, bitch," and fired a single shot into her face. The bullet entered through her cheek. The damage was catastrophic. It destroyed her dentures and nearly severed her tongue completely. Despite these horrific injuries, Dennise Hayslip survived the initial trauma. She was transported via life flight to Herman Hospital in Houston, where she underwent emergency surgery. After the shooting, Thompson fled the scene. He disposed of the murder weapon in a nearby creek. Then he did something that would become critical evidence. He went to the home of Diane Zierna, a friend of his, and confessed everything. He described the shootings in detail. The next morning, Thompson called his father, who advised him to turn himself in. Thompson went to the police station with his father and made himself available for questioning. Initially, Thompson was charged with 1 count of manslaughter for Darren Cain's death and 1 count of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon for shooting Dennise Hayslip. But 6 days later, everything changed. If you're watching right now and you believe difficult story like this deserve to be told with facts and context, please subscribe to Verdict Vault and help the channel reach more viewers who care about justice and truth. Now let's continue. 6 days after the shooting, the case turned into a fierce legal and medical battle, one that shaped Charles Thompson's appeals for more than 2 decades. Dennise Hayslip was still alive, but in critical condition at Herman Hospital. Court testimony showed the gunshot wound to her face caused catastrophic internal damage. Her tongue was nearly severed, a highly vascular organ, creating a severe airway and bleeding risk. Doctors prepared emergency surgery, but during treatment, her breathing tube became dislodged, cutting off oxygen for several minutes. She suffered brain injury and never regained consciousness. On May 6, 1998, her family removed life support and she died. With her death, prosecutors upgraded the case to capital murder. The defense argued the true cause of death was medical error and the later withdrawal of life support, not the gunshot itself. They presented expert testimony suggesting she might have survived with flawless care. But under cross-examination, their own expert admitted she likely would have died from the wound anyway. Prosecutors reinforced that the shooting created the life-threatening emergency in the first place. Under Texas law, jurors agreed that made Thompson legally responsible. The punishment phase added another blow. Prosecutors presented testimony that while in jail, Thompson tried to recruit inmates to kill key witness Diane Zierna, the woman he confessed to after the murders, to keep her from testifying. That evidence supported the state's claim of future dangerousness required for a Texas death sentence.
In 1999, the jury sentenced him to death. In 2001, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals overturned the sentence, not the conviction, due to a Sixth Amendment violation involving an undisclosed jail recording played at trial. A new punishment trial was held in 2005. A second jury reviewed the evidence and again imposed the death penalty. But Thompson wasn't going back to death row quietly. What happened next made national headlines and turned Charles Thompson from just another death row inmate into a name people remembered. Shortly after his second death sentencing hearing in November 2005, Thompson was being held at Harris County Jail before being transported back to death row. He saw an opportunity. Thompson obtained or forged an identification badge claiming he was an investigator with the Texas Attorney General's office. He slipped out of his handcuffs, changed into street clothes, described as wrinkle-free khaki dockers, a cobalt blue button-down shirt, and sunglasses, and simply walked out the front door of the jail. But where did he go? The freight train eventually took him to Shreveport, Louisiana. There, Thompson stole a bicycle and began panhandling for money. His escape came to an end on November 6, 2005, outside a Shreveport liquor store. Acting on a tip, police found Thompson intoxicated at a payphone. He was trying to call friends overseas to arrange a wire transfer so he could flee to Canada. Thompson was arrested without incident and extradited back to Texas. Some argued the escape proved how dangerous Thompson was. Thompson himself argued the opposite, that he didn't hurt anyone during those 4 days, proving he wasn't a future threat. For the past 27 years, Charles Victor Thompson has been inmate at the Polunsky Unit in Livingston, Texas, where death row is housed. He's spent most of that time in solitary confinement. In interviews, Thompson described it as "no way to live" and said death row can be a lonely experience and a struggle for mental survival. Thompson has spent his time on death row writing letters, corresponding with pen pals, and fundraising through a network of supporters. He has about 300 supporters in a Facebook group called Friends of Charles Victor Thompson, operated by a woman in Wales. In 2005, Thompson became a Third-Order Franciscan, which permits religious life outside a monastery. Some anti-death penalty advocates who have visited him believe his conversion is genuine. Others remain skeptical. He also said of Dennise, "I still love her. I've never spoke bad about her. I refuse to do that. I was raised better." But Wade Hayslip, Dennise's son, who was now 40 years old, has different feelings. He told reporters he will witness Thompson's execution and wants one more apology from him while he's on the gurney. "I'm just looking for accountability," Wade said, "and the only thing he has to offer me at this juncture is his life." On September 11, 2025, after decades of appeals and procedural reviews, a Texas judge signed the execution warrant for Charles Victor Thompson. The order set his execution by lethal injection for January 28, 2026 at the Huntsville Unit, the state's execution facility. The date marked the final step in a legal process that had stretched across nearly 3 decades. Execution day followed the tightly controlled schedule used in Texas capital cases. Shortly after 6:30 that morning, prison staff woke Thompson and began the final day protocol. Records from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice show he spent his last hours reading, speaking with his attorneys, and meeting with a spiritual advisor. Texas no longer offers special last meals, so he was served the standard prison menu. No family members were present for an in-person final visit.
By early evening, the process moved forward. Around 6 p.m., correctional officers escorted Thompson into the execution chamber. He was secured to the gurney with restraint straps across his arms, legs, and chest. Medical personnel inserted intravenous lines through ports in the wall, a procedure designed to keep the execution team out of direct view. Witnesses, including officials and victim representatives, watched from behind glass. When asked if he wished to make a final statement, Thompson spoke quietly. According to the official TDCJ transcript, his final words included an apology and a message directed to the victims' families. He expressed hope that they could find forgiveness and healing, and stated that no one truly wins in cases like this. He ended with a direct acknowledgement of responsibility and remorse for his actions. The lethal injection sequence began moments later. Witness reports noted brief physical reactions in the opening minutes, slight movements and uneven breathing, before his body went still. Officials then conducted the required checks. At 6:15 p.m., authorities pronounced Charles Victor Thompson dead. With that declaration, a case that began with a deadly apartment shooting in 1998, followed by trials, appeals, a rare jail escape, retrials, and years of legal argument, reached its irreversible conclusion. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you think the medical complications should have affected Thompson's sentence? Do you believe his escape proves he's dangerous, or that his lack of violence during those 4 days suggests otherwise? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more deep dives into death row cases and legal verdicts, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.